Okay. Well, good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Education and Children's Services Scrutiny Committee. I am Councillor Keith Robinson. I'll be chairing today's meeting. The meeting is being broadcast live and is available to watch on the Council's website whilst we're in public session. A recording will also be available for viewing following the meeting. Members of the public and press may also record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded, providing due courtesy and respect are shown to others in attendance in line with the Council's published guidance. Please ensure you use the microphone which has been set up for you. Can I also remind you to speak directly into the microphone, and please avoid putting anything such as IT equipment or papers in front of the microphone, as this will affect sound quality. Please could you also ensure that your phones and laptops have been switched off or on silent. Well, I'll do that myself now. We are not expecting a fire drill today. In fact, we've just had one. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the chamber following the fire exit signs at the rear of the chamber. Fire evacuation instructions can also be found on page 4 of the agenda. Before we commence with today's business, I have 2 updates for the committee. Firstly, a recruitment exercise was undertaken in November 2025 to appoint a new parent governor co-opted member to the current vacancy on the committee. Unfortunately, no candidates were forthcoming. A new recruitment exercise will be held again next year. Secondly, please can I advise members that the Scrutiny Committee will be considering the budget at its meeting on 13th of January 2026. This will be a public meeting and all members and co-opted members are welcome to attend. The Chairman, Councillor Michael Ladd, will consider accepting questions from any non-scrutiny members present and questions relating to educational matters from the co-opted members on ECSSC, which is us. Further information about times will be available nearer the time. Well, can we have apologies for absence? Yeah. Item 2, apologies for absence and substitutions. Pardon? Okay. Oh, we'll do that way around. All right, we'll do item 1, public questions. We have no public questions today. Item 2, apologies for absence and substitutions.
We have received apologies for absence from Kate Pereira, statutory co-opted member, and also Councillor Penny Otton.
Thank you. Declarations of interest and dispensations. Peter Byatt.
Thank you, Chair. The usual. My wife works for the County Council as a family support practitioner. Thank you.
Any others? Camilla.
I'm here in my capacity as a parent governor representative. However, I'm also a teacher at the Ashley School Academy Trust in Lowestoft.
Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. I am the father of a child with special educational needs. He does have an EHCP and he also is a pupil at the Ashley School.
Thank you. And?
Yeah, just to have a trio from the north, I'm a trustee at the Ashley School in Lowestoft. Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds like they're here more pandant, doesn't it? Ashley?
Yeah, sorry, just to cover it, following on what from Councillor Harvey said, everyone else, I'm a governor at Albert Pye Primary and Sir John Lehman High School, and also have a child with an EHCP.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Okay. Item 4, confirmation of the minutes. Is everybody happy with the minutes from the last meeting? No problems with that? Thank you very much. We come on to item 5, the main item today, Update on the progress of the Suffolk Local Area Priority Action Plan. The objective of this item is to consider what progress the local area partnership has made against the priority action plan in addressing the areas for priority actions and areas of improvement identified in the 2023 Ofsted and Care Quality Commission Area SEND Inspection Report, and the extent to which the efforts are improving the lived experiences and outcomes for children and young people with SEND and their families. Also provided is the annual report from the independent chair of the SEND Improvement Board. The key areas of investigation for today are shown on pages 15 to 16 of the agenda pack. Can I now welcome our panel today? Can I ask each of you to introduce yourselves, and I'll start at this end, please.
Good morning. My name is Sarah James Medmore. I'm the Executive Director for Children and Young People's Services at Suffolk County Council.
Yes, good morning. I'm Councillor Andrew Reid and I'm the Cabinet Member for Education and SEND.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Hayley Griffin. I'm the Service Director for Social Care and Family Support.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Lee. I'm Sense Sufficiency Lead for Suffolk County Council.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Harriet Wakeling, Assistant Director for Commissioning Performance and Quality Assurance.
Thank you. And we'll go to middle row.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Searle. I'm Deputy Director of Nursing for Children and Young People in Suffolk and North East Essex Integrated Care Board.
Good morning. I'm Sue Bulgos, Chair of Trustees for Suffolk Parent Care Forum.
Thank you. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I will now ask Councillor Andrew Reid to make an introductory speech, if you would, please.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to present this item to you today. It is highly important that our plans to improve SEND services continue to be monitored regularly in this way, and it is worth recalling that the subject of SEND provision in Suffolk was last in front of this scrutiny in June 2024. You will see from the thorough set of papers before you that a great deal of work has happened since June last year. Today, we are considering the answers to a series of questions that you have posed about the current progress and delivery of support and services for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. And it is reassuring to note, and I trust that you will agree, that this work is having a positive impact on the progress of improving SEND services in Suffolk. We have data and evidence to show this improvement, especially in terms of timeliness and reduction of complaints. We now have a thorough understanding of our services, the positives and the challenges, and a robust plan on how we intend and do address these gaps and opportunities. And we have been working closely with the Department for Education, which remains committed to supporting all our areas of improvement. We await the publication of the Department's letter from its recent stocktake visit, having discussed our progress to date, but with a clear priority around the work still to be done. Let me be specific about that progress. Data as of 3 days ago shows that by January next year, we will be well above the national average for completing education, health and care plans within 20 weeks. This is a significant achievement. We are issuing more plans than ever before. In November, we issued 364 plans, and this compares with only 186 last November, an increase of 65%. And annual reviews have progressed, with 892 being completed in November against 775 last November. It is important to note here that whilst our numbers of finalised plans and annual reviews are improving, our focus must be on the quality of these plans. We have had and set up a quality assurance EHCP audit programme, and that has been in place since September 2025, and that monitors the quality of new and amended EHCPs. This programme also includes auditing the advice which is received from the likes of educational psychologists, speech and language and therapists and social care. In addition, a working group has been established to co-produce a quality assurance framework from the local area partnership. This will strengthen quality assurance by developing a framework that takes into account all aspects of SEND systems, with regular reporting to the SEND Improvement Board on quality assurance findings and actions taken. We are working closely with our strategic partner, Suffolk Parent Carer Forum, to ensure that children's and their families' views are listened to within the development of this. The service now also benefits from an increased staffing complement following Suffolk County Council's investment and has a stable workforce. However, it is important to note that despite improvements across the service, we recognise that improvement is not felt by all families. We are sorry about this. We continue to work at pace to ensure that better services are available to all. Now, it is well documented, and many of you know and have first-hand knowledge, that the way in which we improve our SEND services is highly complex and very expensive. It also involves many people and organisations, each working at a different pace or with different principal agendas and priorities. It is a system where not all areas of improvement are within the local authority's control. So partnership working is essential. And it is a constant struggle to keep up with the demand for our services and future-proof for the years ahead, with the backdrop of an increase in requests for EHC plans in the last year of 20%. Our reforms also sit against a publicly and nationally acknowledged broken system of SEND services in this country. We are still waiting for the long overdue reform of SEND services, which has been pushed back again until the new year. We were heartened, though, by the recent announcement in the budget last week that by 2028-2029, the full cost of SEND provision will be absorbed within government departmental budgets, meaning future cost pressures will not sit on the council's books. Before I close, I want to offer my assurance that improving the way in which we deliver SEND services remains our top priority, and we will not deviate from our strict timeframes. We are committed to transparency, co-production, and continuous improvement, as evidenced by the breadth of data and oversight arrangements in place. Thank you for your time and attention today. Your scrutiny is important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now proceed to invite Sarah Jane to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from what Councillor Reid has said, it's really thinking how we work as a system, as a partnership, because the only way that we can make sure services are right for our children is to think as a system. So just as you're hearing, and you'll hear more about, the service within the local authority has made the planned significant progress around timeliness of assessments and plans. But as with all improvement journeys, that's only part of what we need to do. Our focus has got to continuously be on the quality of practice and developments within the system. And that's currently being developed through our local area inclusion plan, which we as a partnership are completing for the end of the year. Within that plan, we're focusing in 5 different areas, so thinking again about the system, belonging and inclusion, so working alongside our schools and settings to ensure that as many children as possible can be supported in the SEN learner space and reduce the need where where possible, for EHCP. So really thinking about earlier engagement, thinking about the early years, thinking about our graduated approach as well. The quality of our plans, just as Councillor Reid has said, the feedback and the working relationship we have with the Parent Carer Forum and all parents and carers is very important to us. So hearing continuously when it's working well, but when it's not working well. And for individual families, when it's not working well, that's a really difficult space to be in. So it's hearing that collectively we need to consider all of our children, but for individual families, we continue to hear their voice as well to make sure that we are continuously learning from where things don't go to plan. As Councillor Reid said, we've got our quality assurance programmes in place. They're continuously being enhanced because we hear the voice of parents and carers, hear the voice of schools and settings, and we're triangulating that. As I'm sure we'll discuss today as well, access to provision continues to be a big concern, particularly for our parents and carers. When we look at the parents who reach out to us to have conversations, but also through our complaints process, the biggest reason that they're doing that is because of lack of provision. We need to support our schools to be as inclusive as possible and to reduce the numbers of children with delays in provision as growth currently can't meet available places. So again, it's how we work as a system to make sure that our children are supported in the right way. We're also, we've got a keen focus on preparation for adulthood. We've worked hard over the summer to really focus on what's needed, think about our work going forward and to accelerate our progress in this area. We know that we have much more to do in this space through more effective annual reviews and transition planning, to name a few. And then continuously thinking about engagement and communication, building on the stable SEND statutory services. So previously known as family services, now known as SEND statutory services, because that's exactly what they do. The investment that's been made into right-sizing that service is really, we're starting to see the really positive impacts of that in the timeliness. But there's been a lot of work, you'll hear more about that today, with the service, particularly over the summer and into the autumn term, around the work that they do and the approaches that they take and supporting them to be their best possible practitioners that they can. And alongside that, we're engaging with schools and parent carers. So that's our work as a local area partnership going forward. I hope that's helpful, Chair, and we look forward to your scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other officers wish to say anything before we start the questions? Sue from the...
Thank you. Yeah. Obviously, I've been involved in this process for a very long time, and in response to what has already been said, we know that the timeliness is getting better, but our fear is the quality is then not maybe what it should be or not improving alongside it. We do have the quality assessment framework, and that has identified, I was really pleased with how that went, the workshop that we've been doing, and we did some really good work absolutely identifying where improvements could be made, and there were a number of them, and hopefully that will inform going forward how this can be improved within everybody, because it was not just about the plan itself, it was about the advice and then how that advice was put into the HCP, because that's the problem sometimes. Annual reviews, we know that there's still too many annual reviews that are not done on time. It is a statutory process, and we know that too often that statutory process is not followed. And so having an annual review on time is one thing, but then the process of that actual annual review taking place and everyone being prepared, and I know that we co-developed as a forum the annual review training. I think that should be pushed out much more so that all schools are aware of the process of this duty for annual reviews that is delegated to them from the local authority. So I still see that they have overall responsibility to ensure that they are done in the right way. The improvements, as has already been acknowledged, have not been felt on the ground yet. Communication still remains an issue, but something again that we are working with the local authority on. Talked about working at pace. Yes, there is important to be at pace, but it is really important for that change to be meaningful and be of quality that makes a difference to the families and children and young people on the ground. So once they are and they make positive changes, they need to be embedded so we don't come back around yet again to the same old problems. The partnership working needs to be with all, because special educational needs is everybody's responsibility. That includes, you know, all the families, the children, young people, the services across education, health and care, and other organisations, and I still don't feel that everything is joined up as it could be. And also then we have the already mentioned the Preparing for Adulthood. That kind of went off the, we did have a brilliant team, that was kind of gone, and I think we're now feeling the effects of that, but I'm really pleased that we have a new lead in post just this week, and I'm hopeful that going forward, working on the strategy for that we can make a positive difference to those children and young people, because it isn't before time. And also those families that send support, you know, with children that send support, too long waiting for needs to be identified and actually met. We've talked about things that should be ordinarily available provision being in education, health and care plans, and the fact that they shouldn't be there. But there is, and it is essential they are there at the moment, because there are settings that do not do those reasonable adjustments they are required to do, even something as simple as a timeout card or a toilet pass. If it isn't in a child's EHCP, they won't get it, and that's not the way it should be. So this is everybody's responsibility to get things as they should be, and that's not happened as yet, and I just hope that going forward that this is really going to be the change we need and have to see to make a difference to the children and young people who will become our adults. And we've sadly seen the decline in mental health with both our parents and carers and with the children and young people themselves. And we know that's an issue nationally, but we also are very aware of the information and data that we have locally, and it's essential. Having those needs met early will make a difference to those children's and young people's mental health, who then become our adults, who leave the education system not in a good place to start with. And we have to make sure that every child matters, going back to an old saying, but that every child has their needs met, and so that they can go forward and make, you know, achieve those best possible outcomes. And as of yet, what has happened hasn't had that impact on the ground, and we need to see that going forward as soon as possible.
And Catherine from the NHS,
Yes, hello. So I suppose what I would just like to say is that we are, you know, very strongly embedded in the local area partnership as a health body, and working collaboratively with our PCF and with young people, but also with our local authority partners in care and education. I feel that what we are doing as a partnership is working very strongly around looking for opportunities to identify where we can work together in ways that meet and listen to what we are hearing from children and parents, and some of the issues that Sue has flagged. From a health perspective, you know, it can be not about diagnosis being only the sole means of support. We're looking for opportunities for early identification and support for young people in our health arena, but also together. So say, for example, where a young person might be struggling at school, we need to think about what health support does that young person need to help them continue to be at school, and doing that early. So opportunities through our specialist education support, through alternative provision and through inclusion are some of the things that we're working on. Also in terms of health pathways as well, so for neurodevelopmental, which is a huge area of work and development within the local area inclusion partnership. There's been a lot of investment around developing our services to have early identification and support available for families, but also strengthen and build upon those pathways where young people and families wish to seek a diagnosis and to understand that. And also mental health is another crucial area too. And again, there's been considerable investment, but also improvement in our pathways to access early support in school settings, so our mental health in schools teams, and the introduction of our partnership for inclusion of neurodiversity in schools, which has just started this autumn, again co-produced with parents, but also with education and care partners in those settings where children are every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now it's the committee's turn. Who should put their hand up first? Peter.
I'm on. Yep. Thank you. I think we probably all share the same concern. It was the figures. It's the figures for, the 20-week and going beyond the 20-week assessments. Do we know whether that's due to shortage of staff or whether it's increased workload, even with the staff? In other words, unexpected workload. And secondly, just an observation, we've got the figures from September 24 to now. Would it be possible to see figures from previously so we can see what the trend has been? I mean, the increase this year, and obviously I do have some knowledge of some of the teamwork that's going on out there. I know that our teams work tremendously hard, and is there anything we can do to strengthen those teams, if it includes budgeting for more staff, if we need to process these? I think, reading the figure here, excuse me, one family here, 89 weeks previously. I mean, that's a long time for a kiddie to be without a plan, but we've now got 52 weeks, a whole year waiting for that. The drastic knock-on effects to families, and it goes the right way through. We're down to 40 now, which is good, is what we can do to speed up that with early intervention. So it sounds a bit muddled, but it's about getting the resources in the right place at the right time and making sure it's fully funded. And I think it's something that I would certainly want to see the current government putting funding into.
Thank you. I'll just say a few words and then hand over to Sarah Jane, and who may want to talk about some of the trends, etc. as well. If I go back to when I came into post, which was in effectively the beginning of February 2024, we didn't have the right staff and adequate staff. I'm pleased to say that after a considerable amount of effort to recruit the right staff, we have, in our opinion, the right team today. We don't need at this stage any more staff. What we have been doing is reorganizing and focusing our staff and making sure that they are able to understand what their roles are. There is the need for further progress. As Sue said, rightly identifies the quality is the issue. But I remember saying with sitting in the room with the Department for Education in late February when they were thinking about what they wanted us to do next. And we talked about staffing, and we talked about resilience, and we talked about organisation and confidence, mutual confidence. And I'm pleased to say that under the leadership of Sarah Jane and the senior team, that is much, much stronger. So I feel confident much more confident that we can reach the rest of our goals, important goals, over the next few months and make the progress that we've alluded to. But I'll hand over to Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Reid, and thank you for your question. I think it's really important, and particularly for people like myself who are in the process with our lead members of budget setting, to make sure that we're right-sized for what we need going forward. The investment that has been made into the SEND services has meant that we're not asking for additional resources. So we're in a really fortunate position compared to lots of other places. So just for an example, so our assessment team who deal with requests as they come in, they have caseloads of 35. Now, I know we've spoken to you previously about social work caseloads and family health practitioner caseloads. They're much smaller by the nature of the work that they do. 35 is really very good for an assessment team. For our everybody else, they've got around 300 children who they're responsible for. Again, that's as it, I'm not saying as it should be, because it's very hard if you've got 300 children you're responsible for, and we're asking people to make relationships. There's a challenge. So that's why Councillor Reid is talking about the fact that we are thinking about the staff that we have. We're looking to move into a pod-based system. So that's to think about an early years dedicated team, a primary school dedicated, secondary school, special school, alternative provision and further education. And what that will do is really help our practitioners hone in on those particular skills. Because at the minute, if you speak to one of our practitioners, we expect them to know everything from 0 to 25. You have to have that overview, but actually, if you can really focus in, that also gives you better relationships with the settings that you work more with. So that's where we're moving towards. But we definitely have the resource right, and what you can see, and you're quite right, so any child, and I can tell you, all of those children who are waiting that length of time, people like myself, Catherine, who sat behind, we know exactly who they are, we know what the plan is, we know why there's been the delays, and we know what's being done about it. So we're tracking to that level of detail, quite rightly, because it's far too long to wait in a child's life. Some of our children were previously waiting for over 3 years, so we're constantly seeing every week that comes down, and can't think about children in a backlog, but our legacy children who've waited for longer than 20 weeks, there's a keen focus, but our staffing resource is allowing us to deal with the legacy that we have, as well as new demand coming through. So as Councillor Reid said, 20% increase in need that we're seeing in requests. We haven't had to ask for extra staffing because we've been given investment to have enough staffing. What we do with that investment and those staff is what matters, and that's the journey that we're definitely on. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, we've got...
Sorry.
Please go ahead.
Forgive me, just you asked a question about trends. Harriet will be able to just say about the data from previously.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a dashboard in front of me, actually. I think what we can see is because we've reorganised ourselves, like Sarah Jane mentioned, and we've now got a statutory service, a central team just looking at that first plan, what we've enabled the service to do is, rather than everyone doing everything, we've got a focused, dedicated team. And we've built new dashboards and new reporting to support them so they can really, really, within the month, focus on making sure that plans are delivered within the timescales. So whereas we were seeing lots, when we created our backlog effectively, we created our backlog because we had lots of children waiting a long period of time. What we're seeing now is a lovely downward trend in children having to wait more than 20 weeks. So circa at the moment, of all of the children at the moment that are waiting for a plan, which is less than 1,000, about 67% of those are within 20 weeks. So we were the opposite of that previously. So we've got 33% children at the moment that are waiting more than 20 weeks. But like you say, we've modelled our trajectory, and we're confident really kind of going through to January, February of next year, that most children will no longer have to wait. There will always have a few that will go over 20 weeks because obviously we need to make sure the provision in the plan is correct. But actually our trend has completely changed from what it was kind of 12 months ago really. So I think it's kind of, it's really positive from a data perspective, and the team, credit to the team really for all the work they've done, and their structural changes have supported that in order to enable them to get the plans issued within appropriate timescales.
Thank you very much. Camilla.
Sorry, I pressed
Oh,
my
sorry.
button too early. I do apologise. Just building on to what you were talking about with the significant growth in the team and the quality of the EHCP documentation, I was just wondering what sort of opportunities that newly increased team have to get into schools and experience SEN education in action in order to make sure that what they're putting in those plans is relevant and accurate.
Thanks, Camilla, for that. In terms of where we are with the skills and knowledge of the SEN team themselves and development on that, part of the development work we've got at the moment is to put in place a workforce development plan for the team. That is one of the areas that we do want to build on for them in relation to giving them that first-hand experience of the schools and the settings as well. That's been clear feedback from our head teachers for a while in terms of being able to do that. That will be able to come for us in this coming year now with where we are with the pod system in the teams. They'll be able to specialise, form those particular relationships with the schools and settings that do cover the age bracket that they will be working on. And this is moving forward with them. So each of those area leads will be working with their team managers and the coordinators underneath them to make sure that they're working through on that workforce development to do that. Okay.
I think we're just trying to get the sound turned up. That was a little bit quiet. Please. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Camilla. Just to further on from what Chris has said. So, strategically as well, we're meeting with school leaders in a different way than we were before. So we're having, we're calling them the head teacher breakfast meeting or school leader breakfast meeting. So we're doing that every half term. We're also, when we move into pods, we're considering the area team leads as well and how they lean into schools and settings in a different way. So the conversation is being enhanced to think about exactly how do we share that learning between the two, but also, and we've touched on the quality assurance processes, schools and settings are also part of that quality assurance process because the feedback from everybody is just so important as to how that plan comes to fruition and what it says and the reality within that as well. So it's that constant conversation. And we've been really lucky. Schools have been really opening doors to say, come on in, come alongside us, let's work together. So we're in a positive conversation with the majority of our schools. Thank you.
Thanks, Camilla. I also just wanted to come in. So we've built something into the caseload management system that the service uses. We've built in technical checks. So now any draft plan that before it is issued to a family to review has to have a technical check completed, and we can report on that, and we can see where a technical check has been passed, where it has failed, so we can start to build themes coming from the service as to where maybe we need further staff development and things like that in order to ensure that actually we move to a position where when every plan leaves the building and is shared with the family, actually it's kind of mainly right first time rather than having to come back and go back and forth. So like you said, we've built extra functionality into the system and extra reporting as well to support the service in order to ensure that they are improving the quality of the plans that are being issued.
Thank you. Jane?
Thank you. Can I ask specifically about education psychologists? This committee has looked before at the recruitment and retention difficulties nationally, but also in Suffolk. And with a number of schools reporting an increased number of EP visits being online, there is a concern about whether that is really capturing, as we've just been touching on, whether that's capturing the full extent of a child's needs. So just specifically on educational psychologists, it'd be really helpful to have an update on how that is. That may be a shortage of staff. I'm sure it's more efficient, but the question is whether it's more effective.
Jane?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. So within Suffolk, we have a complement of educational psychologists. We track to make sure how that work is taking place. Over 70% of those contacts are face-to-face with our children, which is important for us to know and understand, and then to look at the impact that's having as well. Across the country, it's difficult to recruit educational psychologists. It's becoming more and more of a challenge, and I think that's because demand has grown hugely, particularly in the last 5 years. But also educational psychologists aren't always choosing to work for local authorities. They're freelancing or consultants. We do quite well in having educational psychologists, and I call it a grow your own, but we've got a grow your own process to that as well. So we are nurturing, supporting and retaining educational psychologists in the best possible way. But your point is absolutely right, because I hear that a lot, which is why we track it to make sure that as many visits as possible, as many assessments as possible are face-to-face, and that schools know as well who those links are with those educational psychologists. Thank you.
James.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much indeed for the report, and Councillor Reid, thank you for that introduction, because I think that's brought us up to date from where this paper is. Because if you look at this paper, it actually says we've got 82 complaints in September, and if you look at the performance management report that came out for Suffolk County Council yesterday, it shows that our complaints are still climbing. So your little bit of extra information to say things are getting better in the last month or so is good to hear, and I just hope it does continue, because those complaint figures are still far too high, and obviously listening from Sue, every one of those is a parent, as we know. So, Sarah Jane, if I must say, your comment about 300 as a caseload, I mean, in the report here, we've got that the caseload is 276, so thank you for being even more generous and saying it's 300. That just seems to me a huge, huge number for anybody to be able to work on. So if you look at paragraph 162 on page 50, where it actually is saying the workforce stability, and it's saying permanent staff, and believe you me, I know the difficulties that this council and all councils are going through setting budgets, so I know, you know, if we had as much as we could, we would have lots and lots of people. But it's saying permanent staff increased from 73.18 full-time equivalent in 2024 to 121. So I'm sure I've heard, and my colleagues have heard, that with the extra investment that we have put in, that we were looking at an extra 90 people to help you out. Well, 73 to 121 isn't 90. And consequently, where I'm coming from is that caseload is just too high to be able to do it. So am I right that it was 90 that was perceived? I found a figure that was 60, but that is only 27 plus, it's only 40 odd. I just think this sufficiency plan with your EHCPs going up as they are is still not quite right. And I know the problem is the budget to make it, but I'm not sure you're ever going to get those caseloads at a size that people can manage to satisfy soon parents.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pass to Chris, because he'll talk to you more about caseloads, but the caseload, that is a recognised caseload for somebody who's doing this work, so that's not a Suffolk specific thing. So the same way that we do with social workers, we look nationally as to what these caseloads are. That's how the system in this country is set up to support children with special educational needs and disabilities. So I just want to say that to you, and we're working within the funding that we've got. This council has invested more money into this than I've seen elsewhere. So it's not the investment from the council, and that workload, Chris will talk to you more about it. Don't forget, so I said to you 35 in assessment, so if you think that's when the really intensive work is happening, 300 would be for workers who are supporting children who have an ongoing education, health and care plan. So I'll just pass to Chris, but we keep very close to this because demand is going up exponentially, and that's a conversation that I'm in continuously with members and with the Chief Executive, so that we are trying to be as ahead of that as we can be. Our modelling shows that we have the right resource to be able to deal with the need that we have currently and hopefully going forward. But I'm staying very close to it. I can hear what you're saying. Chris, would you like to pick up the caseload?
Thanks, Sarah Jane. Yeah. So just to give some more context and reassurance, hopefully around that number and where it sits with things, I can speak from working in a number of different councils and authority areas. and the 300 is on the lower side compared to other areas that I have worked in terms of that number that's being held on a caseload. As Sarah Jane says as well, with that is 300 existing EHC plans. Those officers are not carrying out any new EHC needs assessments at the same time. Their focus is purely on reviewing those EHC plans. In terms of that as an active live caseload, within that 300, there would be a significant number of those where they would be in provision, where they're having their annual reviews, they are in a settled provision, things are moving along for them, and across annual review systems across the country, most of those EHC plans for a number of their years would just be maintained. They would not need the work carried out to amend the plans unless there has been changes in need or changes in provision required to update that plan. As a result of that, what it means is that in terms of actual deeper casework for those officers, that becomes a manageable number for the staff then to be able to maintain that in that respective way. And again, I think what we need to talk around at this stage is the reassurance that you've not seen that in the past number of years here, completely accepted and taken on board with that. With the work that we're doing and the reorganisation into the pod model into next year, that will enable the staff to focus in that sort of way. Part of my role, I'm working with the statutory SEND team to look at that review process with them, to look at which reviews should be prioritised to be attended as well. So, for example, the likes of phase transfers where children are transitioning from, say, year 6 to year 7, or nursery into reception years, obviously as key ones where we would want that EHC plan to be updated as they move into a new key stage and transition point. In order to make the manageable elements of this, then you would expect, and it is again accepted practice nationally, that for other years, unless there were significant changes, annual review paperwork and information is appended to the existing EHC plan to provide that information update, and then you would look to then provide a further update to the plan at the next key stage transition point. And what I'm saying in that is not a blanket approach if we don't do anything until those transition points. If things do change and there are changing needs or provision in the meantime, the team would look to amend and update that plan. But what we do is work it in a way where this is managed in that particular way to make the workload that right, but to make sure that we are updating where we need to.
Thank you. I believe Sarah Jane, you wish to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And Councillor, I didn't answer your question regarding the numbers of staff and the full-time equivalent. We'd need to come back to you with the exact detail because, of course, we are working with staff who don't always work full-time hours. So it might be that that's why you've got a difference in figures. So we need to come back. I think your wider question is looking for some reassurance from me as your Director of Children's Services that I've got enough resource to be able to manage this going forward. And I'm hoping I'm offering you that reassurance that we have that. What we need to do is make sure we're working in the right way.
If I come back, Sarah Jane, you always give us reassurance, and you're giving us the best you possibly can, and I know everybody is, so please don't take it as a criticism. But if you go on to page 49 and you see the nice graph of tracking final plans issued, in January 25, we got a lovely peak there. We must have done a huge amount of work to get that number out the door. And then it is slow, well, not slowly, it's kind of come off a bit of a cliff. So what was happening in January 25 to enable that number to be done, and now we're off a cliff, and okay, you're now on another trajectory, but what happened January 25?
Harriet, shall I go first and then bring you in? So what we were doing at that point is we were focusing on children who were coming to us new, and we weren't dealing with the children who had been waiting an extremely long time in the same way. So we then started to try to balance that out because it's got to be a fair and equitable system. So you're quite right. You can see it go like that, and now you see it coming back up because now we're in a position where we are working with everybody, whereas we weren't necessarily doing that. We were focusing our attentions into certain places. But Harriet, do you want to say any more?
Yeah, I think you've answered it mainly. We've basically changed our approach, Councillor Reader, to making sure that we know we have children waiting for a plan, so making sure that the right children are getting the plan when they need it. So we created, for example, a new weekly assurance dashboard that is kind of viewed every week, and then we obviously look at children. We look at children that have additional needs, so if they're open to social care service, for example, family support, if they're not attending in their current setting, to ensure that the right children are receiving a plan as soon as possible. Like Sarah Jane mentioned previously, I think we were looking at kind of finalising plans so we could get our 20-week figure up, but actually this isn't about all children having a plan in a timely manner, and we saw the importance of really getting rid of, I hate the word the backlog, but getting rid of those children that have been waiting far too long. And I think the approach, we've changed approach essentially, so that's why you'll see our 20-week figure has gone down and will be down this year, but actually if you look at the overall number of children waiting, we have got far less children waiting now, and like I mentioned previously, moving into the next year, we should be running, so most children should be able to have their plans within timescale.
Sorry, I'm going to, if I may come back again, Chair, and just to finish this one off. I mean, and I do completely understand about, the resources that we have. But if we as a council say that 300 is the right caseload because that's the same as everybody else in the country is struggling with SEND. So 300 is not the right figure, to my opinion, because if we're measuring ourselves against other people, they're not doing any better. So, to think that 300 could be the right. And my final point on this is every plan that is done then has to have an annual review 12 months later. So it's only going to build. It's, those annual reviews, okay, you've got people at 25 who then will drop off, but you'll have more coming in at the other end. I'm just really conscious that I want to be reassured that we as a council, I know we're doing everything we can, but actually making the case, and I know Andrew does, and our funding isn't sufficient, and SEND, that this is a capacity problem. We know what to do. All of you are experts and you're doing it. It's just that we cannot do enough of it. And that's why we get 82 complaints, because those people are waiting, as we've heard from Sue. The annual reviews aren't done. So I think there needs to be a bit of recognition and holding our hands up and saying, and we are doing everything we can, but it is just a capacity problem that we've got to get through.
Okay, at this stage, I believe, Sarah Jane, I believe you want to reply to this as well, Sue.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought that question was directed to Sarah Jane.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Just wants an answer.
And I suppose we could talk for a long time about the fact that we're waiting for SEND reforms, because what I would say to you is that this is a system which doesn't actually work for children. So you could give me lots and lots of money, that wouldn't make a huge difference, because of the fact that we need to all think differently about the way that we are thinking early help, early years. The Best Start family hubs are a really great initiative for us to really think hard about how do we get alongside families pre-birth, if that's what we can do to head off. If we talk to teachers, and I'm not a teacher, but I spend a lot of time talking to teachers, children are starting school not ready for school. And there's something that we need to do as a community, as a system, to really help children to be in the best possible space that they can be, to join school, and for that to be meaningful for them as well. So what I would say is we have got to, and we are reforming the system in Suffolk to be a very early intervention, early years, early help system, so that children with the most complex needs get their needs met, but all children have a fair start to making sure that actually if their parents or carers or their settings are concerned about any of their development or any of their needs, the system leans in to help them. We've modelled as well, just before I hand over to Sue, we've modelled for all eventualities going forward. And I'm still, and I know I have to be confident to say this because this is about money and the council's money. I'm confident that I currently have enough money to be able to run a service. But I could talk to you for a long time about 300 and a caseload of 300. Let's think about the system needs to look different, and then we can work out how our practitioners can lean into that. I think that would be helpful. But
Thank you. I just want to come back, James, and say that as a forum, we had already challenged on what you picked up in that report, and the 90 increase, we were told, and this may have been before your time, Sarah Jane, so that actually those 90 were going to be there temporarily to get through the backlog of things. And the things about the ECNAs, with the new cases, the spike that you said, we brought that up as well, that we were disappointed that actually a new family coming into the process was getting a 20-week timeline, but there were young people that had been waiting almost a year that were still not being sorted, and we said it's not equitable, you need to be sorting out that backlog, and for those children that have been waiting the longest, because we know it shouldn't be. So, and the SEND forms, I actually met with the Children's Commissioner and the Children's Minister last night on the webinar they had, and I was quite positively surprised by their plans, and I think we need to be prepared. It'd be well worth people watching what the plans are, because so you can be prepared, because they actually said it's not about a reduction in EHCPs, it's probably about more and having more accountability, and maybe a SEND support plus coming back in. So I think it was quite reassuring for families, but I think it would just be mindful of people to I know it's not here yet, but that's what they're talking about, and I think the council and the local area partnership need to be prepared for that accountability that's coming in, and the increase in support for our children at the earliest opportunity.
Thank you very much. And I believe the next question is from Joanna.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm finding this a little bit difficult because we asked a series of questions around the progress on the local area partnership. But of course, when we're sitting down as members discussing SEND, just that one word, there are a lot of other questions and issues, as James has just alluded to as well, that I think it's only sensible that we can raise at the same time, because we're seeing progress on a journey which is good and it needs acknowledging. But I've got a few questions which I'm going to try and lump them together because they sort of link up but probably need separate answers relating to SEND services overall. First of all, on the touchy subject of money, which you've just been talking about, we haven't yet had the Q2 monitoring report for reasons not quite clear. But what I wondered about the revenue budget is where we are on reducing the transport costs, because there is a service implication in the transport issues, particularly around escorted travel and the difficulties of planning it. Actually, I will pause there. Could I just ask that question first, and then I've got some linked ones.
Yeah, please do. I mean, we did look into transport costs at a meeting last year, which is...
Yeah, well, I think the point being, and I haven't researched it, Chairman, but the point being we made a lot of suggestions a year ago about how transport costs could be contained, let's use that word. And I wonder what the progress on that is, because the transport is part of the EHCP, isn't it? Once it's there, it's there. Can I ask that first and then come back on some governance things?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And you're absolutely right. It is a great concern to us and a focus for us, working with the passenger transport team, to look at home-to-school transport, both for mainstream and for children with EHCPs. I think that we need to be very mindful of the needs for those individual children and respect what is required for them, and that does take into account difficulties around forms of transport. And where we can, we make every effort for children to be transported to school together and in ways which are the most cost efficient. But we must be mindful of the needs of individual children when it comes to their particular requirements. But I'll hand over to Sarah Jane.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Reid. And just to say that the suggestions which were made last time were taken into, we've got a homeschool travel programme. We work very closely with the passenger transport team. They were all taken in. They've been implemented as far as we're able to do that. We've brought the decision making around packages for EHCPs, if I can call it that for this purposes, and transport together, so that we don't make decisions in isolation. And we're also obviously working with parents and carers and schools and settings as well for the best way to do that. I was at a school just last week, and there was a bottleneck of transport arriving to take children home. You could just see the complexities that presented for the school as well. So we need to make sure we're continuously looking at this, but there have been savings made into that space as well. So implemented the recommendations that were made last time.
Yes, it was interesting. Consultation on a SEND unit opening not far from me. The concerns that were raised locally were all related to transport and the challenges of taxis. All I would say, thank you for your answers, is the importance that when we look at money, which I'm afraid we do need to, that we bear in mind that I think it's 38 million a year on SEND transport, that always gets added in appropriately, because that's something which I think we haven't been thorough about enough when we were looking at school transport at this committee many years ago. The cost of SEND transport got lumped into mainstream as one big figure, and we struggled to make sure that actually they're taken as two separate figures, and the SEND transport is always added in any discussion about what we spend on SEND. Can I move on?
Sorry, can I just interrupt you for a second, if I may? I'd just like to, we've got a new member of the panel just joined, Lisa Nobles, from Executive Chief Nurse from the South Norfolk ICB, I believe, and welcome. So she's available for questioning as well. Thank you. Please carry on, Joanna.
So, governance, which is what I always raise, don't I? First of all, if I could just comment on your chart on page 53. I've put my finger in it, yeah. I think it would be helpful when you produce these governance charts. I think it's only right, you needn't go through it line by line now, that you indicate those which are meetings open to the public and those which make minutes or reports available publicly. Because looking at that, it's not clear the differentiation between important, the bottom line, and the top line, if you see what I mean. And can I suggest in future, when you produce those charts, you make it clear. But my question, that's just a bit of a suggestion, my question, and I've got two, is I had thought, and if it's in here and I've missed it, I'm really sorry, because I thought I was looking for it. Are we still getting update reports to Cabinet or full Council? And I don't think we are we, on the SEND action plan? It's only to this committee.
I'll answer that. We do include within my report to Council a regular section on improvement plans in SEND. And informal Cabinet receives regular updates from myself, Sarah Jane and the team.
So it's important that we reassure people through this meeting that accountability is there not just in this committee, which is particularly scrutinising the action plan, but the general SEND overall services provided to SEND children are subject to quite a big framework of accountability. I want to talk about the audit committee.
And thank you for raising this, so I can reiterate the role of the SEND Improvement Board, which was set up in the spring, early summer of 2023, with an independent chair, which meets every 2 months to do precisely that. and that is attended by all members of the local area partnership, including schools, including representatives of the ICBs, the Suffolk Pereira Carer Forum, the NHS in its widest form, the Department for Education, etc. And that is a vital core nexus of the governance from our perspective. Thank you.
Well, we've got that. Thank you, Councillor Reid, because that's quite in here. Well, I was trying to look at the slightly bigger county council picture. Now, the audit committee.
May I see, maybe see if we can further examine that, because that that meeting is attended by myself.
Yeah. Let me finish. Then it'll make sense, I hope. So the audit committee met last week, and various things to do with SEND services passed through the audit committee during the course of a year, including, thank you Sarah Jane for helping us with complaints about SEND services and data breaches. But last week we had some good news, which is what I wanted to get to, and I thought which is the external auditor picked out last year the SEND inspection report for some reason it comes up in their value for money report, which I still can't quite get my head round, the connection between value for money and inspection reports. And she made a point of saying last week that she was very pleased with the progress. So, sorry, get that in. But at the same time, at the audit committee last week, we had an internal audit report. Well, we didn't have, it's going to come in full in March. But I wanted to ask you a bit more about the internal audit report you commissioned on the management of independent placements and bespoke packages. I was a bit confused because I thought every package was bespoke. It's not a word that I'd come across in SEND language before. And so would you like to, I should apologise, I could have warned you I was going to ask about this, but for which I apologise. Who's going to tell us a bit more?
Thank you, Councillor Spicer, for that. Just to give you some clarity then in relation to bespoke packages, feedback. We use that term to refer to particular children or young people that we have an EHC plan for in place where they are currently unable to access a school provision as such, and so we put a bespoke package of support in place for them, which could include alternative provision, tutoring, mentoring, that are put together as a bespoke package, usually with the aim of it being for an interim period of time until they are then able to access a school place again. They can sometimes be referred to as EOTAS or education other than at school as well. Terms can be used.
Say that again, they're sometimes referred to as what?
As education other than at school, or that is abbreviated to at school, or EOTAS, that can be abbreviated to.
Thank you very much. And just remind us that we're looking at this report and progress. Sarah Jane?
Thank you, Chair. And just to say, really helpful feedback on the governance chart. We'll make sure that that's really clear as to which are external and internal or local area partnership meetings. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I believe so. Joe has been waiting patiently, so we'll.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of, I think, should be quite easy questions. I'm always quite interested in actions and then delivery, implementation, and impact. And just to pick out just two. One was related to the Parent Carer Forum and their concerns about the EHCP portal, quite often a source of frustration for some parents. I noticed that it says paragraph 38, a joint action plan will be produced in response to the survey. I just wonder if any immediate changes have been made and what remains outstanding and when that report might become available. I've got some follow-ups, but I'll stop there.
remind me of the two bit. I remember the first bit. Sorry, I've got a neurodivergent brain. So it was about the response to the survey. And the portal. Oh, yeah, sorry. The portal, for me, with the families I know of. Oh, okay. I think continues to be a source of frustration to some families, because some families' only access to the internet is on their phone, and actually looking on a phone at information on the portal is not the easiest thing, and responding to it. It's for many families waiting for a response on there and checking in, logging in. I know that things have improved insofar as that you can request an EHC needs assessment in whichever way you want now, rather than actually having to use the portal, which for some families prefer it being on paper and having something actually in their hand rather to look at and to fill in. I have not heard too much recently of the portal and any issues, so hopefully that's more of a positive than anything else. It's probably me sitting too close as well. As far as the survey, we're still working together, meeting quite regularly, getting the points put ready for this action plan, what is going to happen going forward, but it is being worked on. It was a slow start and we did have to raise the response, but that has now been happening.
Do you want me to come in? Sorry, I'll give a bit of an update. So when we launched the portals as part of the new caseload management system, we've always provided other available ways in which a parent carer professional can request an EHCP. And we have continued looking at the portal and the portal functionality and how we can improve it and what work we can do with the supplier. We recently, literally a month ago, shared another survey with parents and carers to complete on what we class as the parent portal, which is a way they can interact with our workforce around questions that they can ask, where they can view draft information, draft plans, finalised plans and things like that. We're just reviewing the feedback now. We had a really good response rate actually from parents. I think what we're finding is actually the portal functionality itself now is not overall an issue. We are seeing kind of good take-up of the portal. So when parents are requesting an EHC needs assessment, we're seeing the majority of parents would like to have access to a verified portal account and are using that portal account to access information. I think where we still need to improve is making sure our workforce are using it effectively, so making sure that they're communicating with families in an effective way using that portal. But we are, like you say, regularly reviewing the use of we've got two portals actually that we use, and we have, when we launched the original portal, we at no point did we see a drop in requests coming into the service as a result of the portal. But like I mentioned previously, on our landing page on our website and how to request an ECNA, we've made it very, very clear that you can do that by phone. There's other ways you can request an EHC, it's not just via the portal.
Thank you for that response, and I hope maybe at a future time feedback as to whether any changes that have been made have actually resulted, whether it's a follow-up survey, or, because I think people's perceptions of being, their experiences have been quite critical. So, further progress on that reported to us would be really helpful. I've got two more questions. One is very similar, and then one data. I'll do them both if you don't mind. There was a mention of some neurodivergency training materials being put into schools. And I always like that as an action. Great, that's going into schools. How will we measure that impact? It's one thing saying that we're going to do something great, we've done it, but how will that be measured in terms of impact? Because, of course, early intervention can help manage the experience for children in schools far better. And the second one is a very simple one, really, and it's about the specialist placement sufficiency and how many children do we currently still have without a suitable place, and what's the plan for September? Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
So if I take both of those points in turn, if that's okay, Councillor Mason. So initially then in relation to the ASD support going into schools and that training and development with them, in terms of looking at the impact and tracking that impact for us, we'll be doing that in a number of different ways with them. So we will be working directly with the schools that have received that training to survey them to get their direct feedback on the difference it's made for them in terms of their confidence, ability to support the children within their schools, get that direct experience that way. But what we will also do is more strategically look at the impact on the wider system through that. So proxy indicators for us, like you say, if we're using that as an earlier intervention method, do we see a knock-on further down the line in reduction in number of EHC requests that are coming through for children who have that autism as their primary need, to see if we can see any trends that way. And again, I think one of the important things for us is that lived experience, which we're working to develop further this coming year around understanding that from our families' perspective as well, to see if they then experience that difference in schools and how they're meeting that need as well in that way. So we will triangulate that in a number of different ways. Again, we will work with our health colleagues as well for their data and input around the number of requests that are coming through to them for diagnostic assessments, etc., and make sure that that all pulls together in that way. And then we can provide that feedback to show impact in relation to that piece of work as well, and not just output in terms of how many people have been seen.
Do you mind if I just come back on that? I mean, my own experiences as a teacher is there's all manner of different sorts of training that come and hit you all of the time. And some schools may be more efficient at delivering the training and having impact than others. Will there be kind of an assessment as to kind of a distribution of what's working well in some areas, and offering schools additional support that where you begin to feel that actually maybe it's not being implemented quite so successfully as in other schools?
Yeah, so I think, again, a couple of points for that element of it. One of the things that we're doing at the moment is we've actually been carrying out a survey with our schools to get feedback from them in relation to the variety of services that we provide to them. So not just around the autism element, but all the other specialist type services that go into schools from our teams, to understand what they feel is making a difference for them, what is being valued for them. So when we come to looking at that effectiveness and efficiency into the new year and what our structure looks like, to make sure then that we're responding to the need that gets flagged from them in that sort of way with that. I think the other side of it as well for us, and hopefully you start to see that in the report as well, is our use of data and using data to give us intelligence around things now as well. So we're moving into a space where we can be much more analytical now in terms of seeing trends in different local areas, for example, to see if there are different levels of need in different geographical places that we then need to target different types of support into in that way as well. That's part of the evolution, I suppose, as to where we're now moving from having a better data set to transforming that into intelligence for us, so we can target where the support goes into moving forwards.
So I've just got one remaining question, which is just purely data, and it's about how many children are currently without a suitable place, and what's the plan for September? Thank you.
Sarah Jane,
So in terms of number of pupils without a place, we have, it's 41 is the number now that are without a school place from the phase transfer of the year just gone. We're working directly with those families and children to, one, secure short-term provision for them, which may be referring back to a bespoke provision at this stage, so that they are receiving an education, whilst we then arrange that longer-term school placement for them as well. But that number has come down month on month for us since the September when we moved into the new year. In terms of moving that forward, so I think the second part of your question was then looking forwards to next September as well. We're currently in the stage of the cycle at the moment. This is the term where the annual reviews are carried out for those children that will be going through that phase transfer process for next September. So, for example, those currently in year 6 would have their reviews this term to then secure their place for next September. They are coming to the end of that process now, really, as we come to the end of this term. What we have is that data collected. We're doing the consultations with all of our settings and schools for that secondary provision, as an example. That is then coordinated centrally, so we can see what the level of demand looks like as against what places we've got available, and we're looking to be more proactive this year, so that at this stage we have a deadline of 15th of February to resolve those phase transfer reviews. that's the deadline we're working to have those plans finalised with that next step named within them. What we'll be able to do at that stage, if we have a shortage, we have more time then to work into it. We're being more proactive in our planning this year to be ready for next September. And longer term with that, just to segue into a slightly other element but should give reassurance, is around our future SEND sufficiency planning, because I think, again, it's been recognised from a couple of discussion points, the concerns around the number of specialist placements we have and the impact that has. What we're in the process of finalising at the moment, having worked through it with our partners over the past couple of months, is a new SEND sufficiency strategy that will cover us from next year through to 2030. That again is looking at triangulation of data through our SEND strategic joint strategic needs assessment document, the other data sets that we have across the partnership to show us what that forecasting looks like for the coming years, so we can actually start to be more proactive and not just reacting year on year to the cohort coming through, but actually start to plan ahead for ourselves to recognise what is coming through in the future and be able to proactively either need more specialist placements to recognise that need, but also work with our mainstream schools to enable that effective inclusion for the children where they're then able to thrive in mainstream as well.
Thank you. Great answer. Feels a positive step forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In order of hands up, we have Camilla next, followed by Ash, followed by James. So if
Thank
I'll put
you.
you on the list. Thank you. Camilla?
You've touched upon this in your comments just now, but regarding the exponential increase in demand that we keep referring to, do you feel, this is a question in two parts, do you feel that this is being generated by schools not being able to meet need for whatever reason? If they are not meeting need, is that a resourcing and capacity issue rather than necessarily a training issue? And also, how, as a result of that potential situation, how is the issuing of EHCPs, what does the gatekeeping look like for when an EHCP is issued and when actually it's identified that the school needs to be doing more at school level to support? I don't know whether Sue wants to add to that regarding the SEND support coming back in, because it sounds like there is a gap there as well.
I found, my experience has been, since the SEND reforms have been in, that the support for, we know that from our data, the number of children that were on that School Action Plus before dropped dramatically. We went from about 18% down to about 11% at one time. So there are still, and it's still not up where it should be. So we know that there are still not enough children identified who have special educational needs or disability. That to me is one of the biggest issues. And I think since the SEND reforms, the local authorities stopped attending going into schools as they did. They used to have an educational psychologist and the SEND advisory teachers go in every term and monitor those children that were on that SEND register. That doesn't happen. It's starting to happen again. It's something that, again, we pushed for, and special educational services are now going into each school termly, or at least twice a term, I think, twice a year, I think. But I do think with the academisation process and all the other things that have happened, that early targeted support, there's often early good support in early years, but then it drops off. And we know from when children then hit secondary school, we know from data that their mental health declines. Often they don't get the support that they had in primary school, and I do think there needs to be much more accountability around SEND support and what I've already talked about, haven't I? You know, if you haven't got a timeout passing your EHCP, in some schools that won't happen. It's a simple, reasonable adjustment that should happen, and I do have concerns for those. And I think that's why we have so many EHCPs, because families can't get the support they need. Sometimes really simple support for children. I mean, I worked in school for a long time, so I know what it can be like in a school. I worked in a good school. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question, because I might have gone on.
Thank you. Camilla?
Thank you, yes. So can anybody sort of explain what the gatekeeping process looks like for when you might not agree with other parties that believe in the HCP is the right avenue?
Okay, Camilla, yeah, in relation to the gatekeeping and the decision making around that, obviously the decisions that are made are defined by the statute and the legal guidance, the statutory guidance that we have from the SEND Code of Practice and the Children and Families Act. They set out the criteria that needs to be considered around whether we carry out an EHC needs assessment or not. The criteria and threshold for carrying out an EHC needs assessment is actually a very, very low threshold set out in the elements there around whether a child has or may have special educational needs that may require a special educational provision being made for those needs. What it doesn't allow for is in the strict application of that law is for a local authority necessarily to turn around as a blanket approach and say, you haven't implemented X, Y, Z, we're not going to carry out an assessment. What we can look at when we go through that is almost what you would expect to be the standard practice and good practice from our schools in terms of implementing that SEND support stage before an assessment comes in, and we can consider where they are with those side of things. But what we do experience and understand from the wider legal system with it, and from, for example, SEND tribunal appeals, is that their application of that law is very strict in that it is based very much on have or may have SEND and may need provision. They will not look at, well, the mainstream school hasn't necessarily done what they should have done before the request comes in, and that's a reason to say no. They wouldn't regard that. They look very strictly at that criteria. So in terms of how we gatekeep and look at that from our perspective, we try and be as pragmatic and practical as we can around that. And again, one of the elements that we want to look at going forward this year is exactly relating to what Sue said, which is increasing that area around SEND support and that accountability and awareness of what should be done as standard across our schools, what that common expectation is. So what we are looking to be as a system lead in that with our academies, with our schools, so that we have a system understanding of what a family should expect for their child, regardless of which mainstream school it is that they go to in that, so that we can have a high level of practice before those assessments come in. That's the way that we're trying to influence things, is working to strengthen the system in that way of it. What we are not doing and cannot do is apply a kind of blanket threshold and gatekeeping of, right, it's not this, it's this, because we have to work very much within that legal framework and making those decisions.
If I can come back in on that, I know that the data for those that refusal to assess had, you know, or those that you did assess had risen quite a bit. Just recently, there was an example of old practice coming back in again and saying that the refusal to assess because of 3 reasons, and none of them were the lawful reasons. So we've raised that straight away and being looked at. So that's what we need to do. But that's what I mean about good practice being embedded and not coming, those things not coming back again, because that shouldn't happen. You know, if that's really meaningful change going forward, but we wouldn't have to pick that up again. So yeah.
And can I just add in on that as well, just to give further reassurance and knowledge around that? We're currently in the process of and coming to the end of a review element around our tribunal appeals team and what they have been receiving and working on for the previous months, to create that learning cycle for ourselves and do exactly what Sue is saying there around understanding the trends that are coming in, understanding where and why it's being decided against the local authority position, so that we can learn from that and ensure there is consistent application of that moving forwards as well. So again, future elements who then does not have to raise that to say that that's come through again, because we've got that consistent application from the learning.
Thank you both. Just to ask in addition to that is, do you feel, because hearing about the neurodiversity training that's happening is obviously really positive, training and professional development essential in schools. However, do you feel that also there is that capacity and resource issue in schools in that failure to meet need? Because if your team centrally is expanding to make sure it's the right size for the service, a lot of SEN support in schools is quite adult heavy and needs that adult as a resource. So do you feel that schools are in a good position? Do they have the resources they need to meet at a much earlier level?
Yeah, I think in relation to that, if we stand and listen to our schools, one of the consistent themes that we will get from our schools is a concern over finances for them. I think that's not just a local issue, that's a national issue. We hear that consistently around schools' finances and the impact that that can have for them in terms of being able to put support in place and do what they would necessarily want to do. I think in terms of moving that forwards though and looking at that with them, one of the elements that we're moving into in the new year, and part of the workload that I will be taking forwards in the new year, is to review our high needs funding system and look at the impact that has been having for us. We are in a fortunate place in Suffolk where we have high needs funding available for schools before an EHC plan is in place as well. So what we need to do is make sure that that is being effective for the children and the schools. And again, to the point that you've raised there as well, I suppose the traditional application of that funding has been to put a one-to-one in place with a child, and that almost becomes a default position for schools and how to use that funding. I think what we need to be able to do moving forwards with that is encourage creativity for schools so that they're able to look at different solutions around that. And that's not to say that one-to-one shouldn't be used. They are absolutely appropriate for certain children in certain situations, but it's that ability for schools to then go, okay, do we have a cohort of children where they might benefit from something that's done as a group session together rather than having a one-to-one attached to all of them? Can we get a more skilled member of staff to do something by recycling those funds in a different way rather than approaching it that? Can we use it? And again, we're having conversations with our health colleagues, again, as part of the sufficiency work, around sufficiency, not just being sufficiency of placements, but also sufficiency of resource to support in those placements as well. So that's again looking at the access to the therapeutic type support that pupils may need as well moving forwards. So it's to move it forwards in that way. I mean, for that space, for that pre-EAC space, we're talking around, there's about a £12 million element that goes to schools at that. At the moment, there's a significant investment into that. What we need to make sure, and we will do going into the new year, is that we're getting the right impact from that and are able to support schools in the creative way with the context that we know there is for them at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Ash?
Thank you, Chair. Really quick, hopefully possibly a yes-no question before I start with the other ones. Joe mentioned about the those not in waiting for a place. Now I've got on paragraph 117, page 42, it says 22nd October, that was 71. Is that the same number that's now gone down to 41? Or is that a different figure?
Yes, that's that number now reduced.
Well, that's good news, isn't it? So thank you. Okay, right. Just wanted to get that out of the way before I move on. I wanted to maybe ask a bit more about that, the kind of voice of the child, the voice of the parents and carers, and that kind of work in amongst that. Before I go into it, again, just something that was mentioned around the portal and the IT. I know there's obviously sometimes that communication, that issues with when the plan gets forwarded on to parents and carers, and then there is changes to be made. I know in the past there's been issues with the ability to make those changes easily because of the way that it's sent in a kind of read-only document, and then to make changes, it can sometimes be a bit of a backwards and forwards complication. Is there any work going on to kind of improve that IT side at all? You know, you mentioned, you touched on it. I just wanted to see if that's part of it. You know, kind of. Just quickly.
I don't have the full detail, but I know we have been doing work, like you say, on how parents, carers, professionals can do strike-throughs to say, yes, no, I agree with that, no, this needs to be amended and things like that. And we have been continuing to work with the supplier on kind of what is possible within the functionality of the system to enable parents and carers and professionals to be able to do that. I'll probably need to get more of an update from the team, though, to give you any more on that, I'm afraid.
I wasn't expecting a full, completely IT knowledgeable thing right now, but I think, Sue, did you want to come in before?
Yeah, I was going to come back in. Outside of my SPCF role, I do a lot of EHCP checking through my voluntary role, and we always get them in a Word document so that we can comment on them. The portal issue is not a parent-carer issue for amending. Usually it's one the local authority have to deal with, because we usually get them in a Word format or a PDF so that we can make those comments without worrying about them all. Yeah.
Okay, and then, okay, now, hopefully I haven't thrown myself off course with those two quick questions. So it was more about the way in which, obviously it's really important that we're bringing in and working together with parents and carers and the young people themselves on this. Obviously, this is the critical thing that we need to do. All these boards and everything, it's wonderful, it's really positive, but ultimately we're looking at the impact and how that works with the parents and carers. So I've written it down somewhere, somewhere, but I can't find the exact page now. But there's obviously talk about the way in which the engagement between parents and carers and the officers responsible for their case, etc., is being improved. So around booking, being able to book appointments directly. So I presume, and this is all about stopping that lack of communication, which ultimately ends in someone going, I've got no choice but to go to tribunal or mediation or what it is, trying to get in there earlier with that conversation. I'd like a little bit more information on that if I can, but on top of that, looking in with obviously the deep dive letters that came from Ofsted and some of the previous things that happened, I've spoken to some of you about this I think in the past, but around there's the, originally there was a time to listen programme, which was geared at parents and carers having been able to have conversations with more senior leaders as well as. So I just wanted some more information on what format that will take around kind of having to reach out to those senior leaders, as well as the changes, meeting with your specific case officer, if I may, if that makes sense.
But if I may, Ash, just as a point, if that's a quick question, don't ever ask a complicated one.
I can answer the first bit around the booking system. So we are currently working with our IT colleagues on a booking system to enable easy access for parents and carers to be able to kind of engage with their worker. I think it also brings back when we were talking about caseloads, and especially when a parent is engaging with us to try and get their first plan for their child, is having a manageable caseload and also having a clear named worker assigned to that family, I think is really, really key. I think previously maybe we weren't sharp on that. I think we are now. I think workers are very, very clear on the families that they are working with. And it's manageable now in the sense that they should be able to be picking up the phone and having those conversations. We know we still need to improve. And I mentioned about a survey we'd recently done to parents and carers about the portal. We're just about to launch one with our officers on the front line as well to say, tell us from your perspective what works, what doesn't work, what do we need to do moving forward. So we are looking, like you say, with our IT colleagues about a booking system. And I think now that we've got rid of most of our backlog of kind of legacy kind of children waiting for a plan, that will just give our officers more time to actually spend, obviously, with children as we're drafting that with them.
And yeah, just to pick up on that then in relation to, first of all, the booking system, it's something that we implemented in the previous area that I worked in before coming here. It worked really well for families in that system because it enables them to book directly into an officer's diary. They will make a number of slots available each week that families are then able to book directly as a slot, so they're not dependent on the officer responding to an email to say, yes, this time's available. They access the link, it gives them a list of the times that are available slots, and they just book in directly, and it gets entered into the officer's diary as a new appointment for them in that way. So it gives that direct key in straight away. Those links are made available through the letters that go out initially to families to inform the process and who their officer is. And then again, in the previous authority and what we can look at here, it's around that those links also then being on the local offer as well, so families can go in directly through that if they don't have that letter to hand, to be able to then book directly in that way as well.
Just quickly, Sarah Jane, so just so if for whatever reason you're digitally excluded or unable to access, I presume there is still a capacity for someone to kind of get that information through a phone call. Yeah.
It doesn't replace the phone call or booking it in that sort of way at all. It's just another way of being able to provide that access.
Yeah, thank you. And good question. We've been really lucky that our Parent Carer Forum have been really generous helping all of us, actually. I was just trying to look to see where we'd had those drop-in sessions, I'm going to call them that soon, but where focus groups, thank you. I know both myself and Councillor Reid have done that. I know Catherine and Lisa have. we have the ability to have those focus groups to hear directly from parents and carers, and that's helped by our strategic partnership with the Parent Carer Forum. But we meet families, all of us meet families at different points and speak to children in schools. We've got our Belonging and Inclusion Conference on the 30th of January. That's being co-produced, and it's a conference for schools and settings, really, so that we can get into that space and be in that conversation with everybody. So we are out and about in lots of different places. As a leadership team, we were at West Suffolk College. It was just last week, actually. It feels like, so we're welcomed, and we've been into Suffolk New College. We've been doing lots of making sure we've got a presence in particularly our further education colleges, because we've got a lot to do around preparation for adulthood. So I think we are wanting to be accessible and to be visible, and we're grateful to the Parent Carer Forum for supporting us. And just as well, so those events that the Parent Carer Forum do have been fantastic. And the last one in Bury St Edmunds, Councillor Reid, I know that we had a really good experience talking to parents and carers there, which is facilitated. The Open Forum events, by the Parent Carer Forum, just fantastic way for us to be as a partnership. So all helpful ways to make sure we're engaging.
Can I add to that as well, for just coming back on that other part as well around meeting the senior leadership and moving that forward? Part of the work that we're implementing from now through to March, we've been successful in the bid with DFE around, they term it an intervention support fund. What that is essentially for us is a pot of money to do some further development work for ourselves. One of the streams that we're working on with that is that from January to March we'll be delivering a number of events with our parent carers, where the senior leadership team will be at those events and enable that access to them in that way. What that will then lead on to for us as well from that is we will then maintain a series of locality events, for want of a better phrase, where we will be able to move around the different local areas within the county council and have those sessions again where parents will be able to come to a certain venue and meet that leadership team. We'll be able to present updates and again answer those sort of direct questions as well from families as another way of increasing that engagement.
Okay, I'm just going to be a bit of a pain and just dig into that a little bit more. Again, we all know how wonderfully rural parts of our county are. So, what, in terms of, I'm just going out again around access. Obviously, these locality events, really important, excellent. But, if for whatever reason there is, is there obviously mechanisms beyond like a formal complaint system? You want to encourage people away from that if they can, to kind of reach out and interact with, other people other than necessarily their kind of service officer.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is something that I've implemented previously as well, and it's worked on two different levels for us. So we've been able to have that wider system-wide conversation with families in those events and venues and discuss what developments are and what future plans are. But what we've also been able to do then is take those individual queries and concerns from a family and then feed them into the direct service that needs to be able to support them in that way, and then ensure there's follow-up and that engagement with the family. So it does provide that additional route in for families with concerns as well, without having to go through a complaints process. It does work effectively.
Thank you. I mean, I do have some other questions, but they're slightly unrelated, so I'll sit back for a minute and then I'll, if it comes in.
Okay. Next on the list is James, followed by Jane, followed by Peter, and the chairman would like to get a question in at some point. So, James.
Right, thank you very much. And just picking up some of the points that have been said, and Sarah Jane, I think, this having these pods in these age groups, as we've mentioned before at the last accountability board, I think must be the way. And the announcement today that the government is actually encouraging, and they're not using the word family hubs, but they're going back to their Sure Start. I think personally they're all the same thing. They're just under a brand of what colour you want to paint it at that particular time. So I think that should be a good way going forward. We've got good family hubs. We're really blessed with the number that we've got in Suffolk, and that must be an opportunity. So I just want to pick up on that. Just picking up on the other point of the number of, as Joe has asked, about the number of children who haven't got a place, and you say 41. It used to be 29. So, be careful. And the other question is that, what about people who are homeschooled? Because we know a number of people are not within the education system, have gone into their home school. How are we looking after that, and are they included in the 41? That's my first question.
So in relation to the pupils that are homeschooled, they're not classed as being without a school placement because they are in that elective home education space, so they would sit as a separate cohort of children because that, and we will talk around choice around that as well, because some families are electing to do that because it's a lifestyle choice, but some families are electing to do that, we're aware, because they do not necessarily have confidence in the system at this time to meet their child's needs. The elective home education service has had an increase in capacity recently, a temporary increase in capacity, to enable them to do some more proactive work with families when they're coming to that decision-making point of saying, I think I might want to withdraw my child from the system to electively home educate, to have that more positive conversation around what that means, what the impact of that can be for their child. Is there a different solution if that's not through a lifestyle choice and there's something else that needs to be done, so we can do more proactive work with that cohort going forwards. Regardless of whether they're in a school place, not in a school place, or electively home educated, that child or young person still has an EHC plan if they're in that cohort with EHCs. They are still subject to that annual review system as well, to make sure that we are staying on top of that situation and moving it forwards with them. But, and again, having referred to what I just have with Sue there, we are aware that that cohort has grown quite considerably in recent time, and that is something that we are looking at and targeting at the moment as part of that wider system element for us. So when I talked before around data and turning that into intelligence for us, what we're now starting to be able to do is link that element in, as well as just looking at what does SEND support look like, what does EHCP levels look like. It's elective home education, it's numbers of children being suspended, it's numbers of children receiving permanent exclusions, it's attendance levels. We're now starting to triangulate that better to understand and move that forwards. And my response is not saying that is in a perfect situation now, because we acknowledge it is not. But what we're saying is we are very much aware of that and are now building forwards with that.
That's really good to hear that. Yeah, I mean, we know it's there, it's just making sure that we actually do. If I could just come on to one of the questions that we put here about how the local authority works with the national health system, and we've got two of our esteemed members here from the NHS, so it'd be wrong not to ask a question. Integrated care service or system is, I think, so much of the time is talking about social care with adult social care. The integrated care system is about children as well, as how the whole system works together. So, and I've read, you know, the 14, 20 paragraphs that how you've answered that question, and you know, reading it, it all looks extremely positive. Can you assure me that there are real honest conversations between the two parties to ensure that both of you are doing the bits on the EHCPs that you have to do in a timely manner? I'm going to use a terrible example, but I've said it's a terrible example. We have had so many organisations, quite rightly, have taken on a lot of blame where other parts of the system have failed, if I can put it that way, in a diplomatic way. And I'll take it the system with the ambulance service. As we know, the ambulance service worked as hard as they possibly could, and it was not long ago, not many years ago, that actually when you called an ambulance, they came in a very timely manner. There was a period recently in the kind of not too distant past where the ambulance wait time has been considerable. And when the chief executive used to come on the television and say about the wait time, for months and months, he never absolutely answered the reason why those ambulances were not getting there on time, because of this very much system of not one organisation wanting to blame publicly another one. Now, that's really commendable, but actually it doesn't get to the heart of the problem. And it is now what we've got with the ambulance service, is they tell you the reason why their ambulances there aren't on time is because they're stuck outside a hospital. So do you have that relationship between health and social care, or sorry, not social care, with children's services, where you have those honest conversations and actually people are then held to account? Actually, I'm waiting for this EHCP because you haven't done your bit, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say that you've just asked, could have put in a slightly different way.
Thank you, Councillor Reader. So how health works with local authority and the other partners within the SEND system is huge, because Sarah Jane and I work very closely together. In fact, I spend more time with Sarah Jane than I do members of my own team sometimes. We work formally together and we work informally together, and kind of building that trust and relationship has been really important for us. I think our teams are starting to work together more effectively. There's been a lot of transition within the local authority. We've got a lot of great new people that have come to work with us. Our governance is helping them to come together, and the informal kind of meetings that they have now is again starting to build those relationships. You have to build those relationships before you can have really honest and open challenge, and I think we are in that space now. I think making sure that that then flows through the rest of the health system with partners is probably our next step, to be really assured of that. But I certainly feel, from my perspective, that I am able to challenge Sarah Jane. I hope Sarah Jane feels that she can challenge me, and I think Catherine, my deputy, would feel the same through her relationships with the local authority. Thank you.
Just quickly come back. So do you see that the transformation that the ICBs are going through is going to enhance or damage that relationship?
So I think our aim is to keep stability in that relationship. I mean, it is, you will know, it's a really difficult time at the moment for us going through the consultation to remove 50% of our workforce. The aim is absolutely to maintain the relationships and to maintain stability in how we do that, and to do that as efficiently as we can. And I mean, one of our challenges will also be the local government reform and how the ICB responds to any LGR. But definitely one of our main aims is to make sure that we keep that stability in SEND, in safeguarding, in everything that we do.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. I believe you want to enter the fray on this one.
Thank you. And just as you would expect, I completely agree. And Lisa, the question was put to us directly from the Department of Education and the CQC a couple of weeks ago to say, you've got all of this change going on around you, ICB consultation, LGR, how are you going to make sure that you continue to improve these services? We will do that by the relationships that we have. So I know there's a huge amount of change already happened in the ICB. I haven't felt any difference in the relationship that I have with ICB colleagues. I'm sure that's to their detriment because they're doing a lot more than they were doing, but making sure that things are improving continuously for our children in Suffolk, I have no concerns that that's exactly what we're doing. That culture that Lisa talks about, we've got to do that in all of our organisations to make sure we model that behaviour, and we see that in the staff and the way that they're working. But it's a big job at the minute to think about how do we do this with everything going on around us. Keeping children at the heart of every conversation we have helps with the other things going on too.
Thank you very much. That's really reassuring, and I think having that aired in public is really good. So just my last question, Chair, and it's back on to sufficiency. On paragraph 119, it clearly states, and three of us are from the north here, it says the north is still an area that needs robust sufficiency planning due to having the high level of youth justice and social care involvement in the county. This will be a focus for our new sufficiency plan. So could I ask if paragraph 122 means that some of those 40 places are coming to the north of the county?
Councillor Reid. I'm just catching up on those particular things. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, so in relation to the 40 places that are coming through in September 26 and 27, I can check with the team for you on the location of them and come back to you on that one. It's not something I have to hand right now, so I'm quite happy to do that for you. In terms of that future planning of it though, and looking forward, it is that triangulation of those different aspects together that we are looking at with this to make sure that we get this right geographically as well. I think the recognition for us in this strategy is that Suffolk is such a large geographical area with very spread out areas of population where obviously transport and travel can be an issue to move between some of those areas as well. And the feedback that I've had from schools already around some of those elements is difficulties in particular areas to make sure we have the sufficiency for our children in those areas. So what we will be looking at planning with this is to make sure that that is addressed on that element of it as well, not just here's 100 places created in an area that doesn't actually serve the right part of the local area. It will work in that way, but I can give you that information on the other places certainly.
Thank you. Jane.
2 questions, if I may. I'm back to EHCPs and timeliness. It would be good to think that we prioritise those with greatest need, and there's some children with very complex needs, and we've heard a little bit about that change in approach from dealing quickly with new cases and perhaps still having some backlog. Can you just give us some assurances about how we prioritise those with the greatest needs so that they're not waiting so long? Because these very long waits in the life of a child are hugely, it's a long time.
Yeah, certainly. So in relation to those longest needs, the run rate that we have at the moment is showing us that by the end of January, we will have this cleared in terms of that backlog as such and the longer wait of that. There may be a very small minority that are still there because of the complexity of the issue that we'll continue to work through. But our expectation is that by that January time, we will just be working on those new assessments that are coming through within that 20-week time scale. So in terms of prioritisation, that won't become an issue for us at that stage because they should all then be expecting to run through within the statutory timescales that we've got in place for it.
That's really good news. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to add, we've also built additional reporting for the service, so when all the new assessment requests come in, it's very, very clear to the officers if those children are already being supported by us in other ways, so if they're being supported by family help, by social care, if they're a child in care, if they're working with the Youth Justice Service, so it should be very, very clear for them to help see who actually is working with them, other needs around that child, for example, what is their attendance currently, if they are attending a school at this moment in time, if they have previously been excluded from a school, so they have a lot more information available to them to help support with making sure that the right children are getting a plan at the right time.
Thank you. Second question. In the past, I found it really telling to have that figure, and I'd love to have it again, of the number of children who are in mainstream education where the local authority acknowledges that mainstream is not appropriate. I think that's one of the most powerful figures we look at, and I'd be really interested if we have that.
Not to hand, but I can definitely get that for you.
I think it really speaks to some of Camilla's questions around the pressures on schools and the recognition on the part of all professionals sometimes that mainstream is just not appropriate, not suitable. So I think it's a key question for this committee.
Sarah Jane.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I don't have figures, but in conversation with our special school leaders as well, they will say to me that they have the same concern for some of the children in their setting, some of their learners, to think that they probably could be in mainstream school. So I think you're absolutely right. There's a continuously looking at where children are, their needs are best met, and that's the conversation that as a system we need to be in much, much more. So we'll definitely bring that information to the fore.
I was also just going to add, sorry, just reminded me, Sarah Jane, we're currently working with Bedford as our sector-led improvement partner, and we're looking to develop with the partnership a new scorecard and making sure that we're looking at the right metrics together as a partnership. So that's currently in development at this moment in time.
Thank you very much. It's Peter Next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for going through so many questions. I now have to tick off my list. Now, I think we're all of one mind. I think we all care about what you brought to us today. Just a couple of things, really. Something was about preparing for adulthood, and transition planning is a priority. And also tied onto that, and I know it's not for this discussion here, but we spoke about corporate parenting in the past, about where we stop being the parents of children with special needs, and as teaching people to suck eggs, but we know that if you've got special needs as a child, those needs will follow you into adulthood. It's as sure as eggs is eggs, So it's what we do for that transition, and to make sure that we do focus on that transitional period. However, the thing I really wanted to ask was about pods and getting an update on that, because it's great that we've actually looking at something which sounds like it really will work much, much better, focused on the age groups, that you've got your age-specific staff to deal with it. And the other thing was, as James just referred to, the government announced this morning the Best Start Centre, whatever they are, whatever they're called, that 7 out of 10 of those, the new ones, are going to be in areas where we are hardest hit. Now, speaking from the north, that in my own division, there's Kirkley, in the town, there's Harbour and Normanston. We've got 2 of the 10 most deprived wards in the country. Now, I would hazard a guess that those hardest hit wards will be very, very high up on the list of children with special education needs. So what can we do as an authority to make sure that the government sticks to what they've said, that they will be prioritising support into those hardest hit wards, hardest hit divisions? Not to say other areas don't need it, but can we in any way put pressure on, once these are coming in April, to say, look, these are the areas, you've been throwing money at areas of high need for years and years. We've now come up with a formula which sounds like it's going to be a better way of directing that support. So really, is it something we can take away from here as a recommendation, or is it just something we would say, let's see what comes up in April and then follow them up? But I wanted to say, everybody's said this morning, probing on really key things, and thank you for all the answers, because it's difficult, I know, to sit there and be scrutinised, but that's the whole point. And I think, I've been very, very happy with what I've heard this morning, that you're well on top of it, but any support we can give morally and physically, and pressure on the existing government to actually step up to the mark and support our hardest hit areas principally. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll answer first. I don't mean to be political about this, Councillor Byatt, but we've been lobbying government in its widest sense around per pupil funding. We will continue to lobby government about the disparity between urban areas and rural areas, and the issues associated with having a heavily rural county, irrespective of where that need is required. We will continue to do so, and any help that you as a committee can give in terms of that would be much welcome. Thank you very much.
Sarah Jane.
Thank you very much, and just please don't hold me to it, even though I'm saying this publicly, but we are working with our staff and our partners around the pods, and really making sure that we're in the best place to introduce them for the new academic year. So a lot of work with our staff in particular, but also to make sure that we get that right. Got to do things fast, but we've got to do them well and steady. I can hear Sue in my ear all of the time saying pace is important, but get it right. So really important we do that. And I think you will always see us as a team now, because I think historically, maybe, and this is in lots of children's services, people have thought about education here, SEND here, children's social care. We are a team. Our children are our children, and they tend to go in and out of our different services. So we are building a system around children. That doesn't mean that if you've got an EHCP, you go here, and if you've got social care needs or early help, you go here. We are a system, and it starts with those family hubs. We're taking a real opportunity to think about how they work, what they need to do. Alongside Hayley is leading our Families First work, which we talked to you about before, but a system has to support children and families, not, you know, individual silos, and that's what we are building. So hopefully you'll see the impact of that too.
Thank you. And I believe Camilla wants to have another go, and then Ash.
Thank you. I'd like to know a little bit more about the alternative provision that's referred to in the report. So, is the figure of 255 still up to date for the number of unplaced children in AP? And do you keep figures, I know you might not have them to hand, about how many children that are classed as placed are accessing some form of AP, perhaps through dual provision? And to build on that, it's great to hear that the new AP team is being set up. I can see that referred to, but what sort of cost are we looking at for that alternative provision?
If I take the bit around the alternative provision team while Harry just looks for some of that data, if that's okay. So in relation to the new alternative provision team that's being set up within the Sense statutory team, that is from within existing budget within there that we're doing that. We've recycled a couple of posts and elements that have been spare from there from part-time posts, etc., to create that team. So there's not been an ask for additional resource above what we already have set aside for that service. What that will do for us is ensure that we've got absolute grip on that cohort of children and young people that are in that situation for us, and have dedicated officers then who'll be working directly with their families. We're running that alongside bringing in some other particular programs of support to enable us to track attendance and progress for those children much more clearly. So again, it is referenced in the report around the likes of study books and welfare call, and what they enable us to do then is have a daily check-in with the alternative provision provider to ensure that child or young person has actually attended that day, and we can then be much more proactively responding if that attendance starts to drop off a little bit, because in previous things you wouldn't necessarily have that common update because their attendance doesn't come into the local authority the way schools' attendance records do through automated systems. So this gives us a way of having much more secure grip on that cohort moving forwards as well. The other bit around that alternative provision that we're looking at very much with it is seeing alternative provision as part of that wider Sense system as well, and not something that sits separately to it. So we do have at the moment a separate alternative provision service as well that also works with our children that have, say, for example, been permanently excluded and may need a place in the pupil referral unit or an alternative provision provider. We're making sure that when we're looking at that and the sufficiency of it, that we're looking at that cohort together and in line with what's previously come from a DFE and past papers from them. We're very much looking at that three-tier system of approach around alternative provision as well, and we really want to change the focus around what alternative provision is seen as. So I think traditionally it has become almost a final destination for a lot of children and young people, where they go into that and then don't necessarily move on to somewhere back into a school setting. What we want to do with that is have alternative provision providers engaged at an earlier stage again to help us with that earlier intervention. So not becoming involved, say, when a child is about to be permanently excluded, but actually earlier in that journey for the child, so that if they need that greater input, that slightly different setting to give them, say, different coping skills or resilience to be able to deal with situations, and they're then able to reintegrate successfully back into their mainstream placement as well. So that's that kind of wider vision that we have for the modelling with that as well. And I'm hoping from that Harriet will now be able to give you the data side as well.
Sorry, I'm desperately trying to load the dashboard at this moment in time. I don't have it to hand at this moment in time, but I'll continue to look for it.
Thank you. Yeah, didn't necessarily expect those figures to be to hand, but it would be good to have them afterwards, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Ash has got another question, or has it just been asked?
Well, that one's been answered. This is one around, it's in the key challenges, a bit of, I don't know, I think it's question A, point 2 II, and it's around some of the challenges, and it says the Suffolk Parent Care Forum, they've highlighted the mental health needs of parents and carers. Obviously, parents and carers, you know, are doing a lot of work advocating for their children and young people in this. So it's just maybe this is a question for our health colleagues here, just around, you know, where that further support may or is coming from. I mean, I know obviously getting a diagnosis and everything initially, then you can sometimes feel like that you've been left behind by that, and then having to then jump into an EHC process possibly is quite a lot for it. So just really just some more information about how parents and carers are supported, please.
Can I just come in first? Is that okay? Yeah. It was something that the first time we'd asked it in our survey, and we were really saddened by, but not surprised by the number of families that said their mental health declined. We also know that such a lot of our children and young people's mental health has declined too in this process, and it becomes overwhelming, you know, fighting through the system, which was what we need to improve. But also that waiting for, we talked earlier about the waiting for diagnosis, while we should be needs-led across the board, but it's not, you know, and often that diagnosis is needed, and that brings its own challenges. But I do think that families are not supported enough to go through this process, the SEND process. When the SEND forms came in, I was an independent support coordinator for Suffolk at that time, and part of my role was people working with me too. We supported those families from before they made that request. They would ask for support from an independent supporter, and we would sit alongside those families while they went through the process up until they went to tribunal if necessary. We don't have that, the government cut that funding then, but I've always said there is a need for independent support like service to support families through that process. And I think that would alleviate some of the stress that is put on families, because it's unknown. When they're first joining this, you have, like I did many years ago, a very steep learning curve on, you know, you trust people and then it all goes wrong. And I think there is still a real need to acknowledge and support families with this process.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So obviously our usual range of mental health services and support is available for all adults that live in Suffolk. However, we are, I suppose, talking about some of the things that Sue's just described. Something that might not mean a mental health diagnosis or a need in that traditional way for a parent. We're talking about restorative practice. We're talking about parents having support to go through a difficult process that can feel like a battle, and the stress of you know, managing that, but also supporting a child who's got additional needs. So one of the things that our health practitioners would do is obviously be able to signpost any parent to that traditional offer. But also we've been talking about restorative practice in Suffolk, and there is some training that is being led currently by the local authority, but will be offered to all of our practitioners that work in the SEND system and our children's services to understand the experience and the journey of that for a parent, and work in a way that is to restore confidence, but to understand what that parent is actually experiencing and going through when they might be in a process that is extremely stressful, as well as caring for that young person. I think one of the other things that I would like to add as well is that you know, we do make sure that when we hear from parents that we take the time to listen, but to actually speak with parents directly about what they want us to hear. So not necessarily a complaint, but it might be a query, so something about your child to do with their health services. It's not an exchange of written information. It's about listening. It's about taking the time to call a parent, to speak with them, and you know, our designated clinical officer for SEND is a key point within the system for parents, but for health practitioners to give advice around how to work with parents when complex issues might be being presented. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that information. That's really.
Thank you.
Just quickly about the voice of the child. I think I missed it last time. Sorry. it says that on the SEND improvement board that children with so young people with SEND have attended the improvement board. That's brilliant to hear. Could it possibly be that children, young people with SEND, always attend the improvement board? Would that be a better way of ensuring that every time that youth voice is captured? I know you've obviously got the schools as well, but just is that possible?
I'm only jumping in because I feel really strongly about this, that actually we have used that kind of method, and for all of us it feels slightly uncomfortable that we make children come to us, and we would rather go to the children and young people in the environment that they operate, they're living within, or that they are within in their school or college, rather than it's brilliant. It's lovely to hear from them, and I know there's been a lot of work to kind of make sure that there is benefits for the children and young people that come as well, so they get a tour of this building and things like that, which is great. But I do think that if we want to understand their experience, we need to go to where the context that they're within.
Yeah, Bobby, please.
Sorry, I've just snuck down from the back because my microphone's not working. I just wanted to completely agree with everything just said, and it's something we consider when we engage with children through the engagement hub all the time. And sometimes it's really good to have them come in to see how we work, but we get so much more from them by having those conversations in different places where they feel most comfortable and where we can actually see what their challenges and joys are, be that children with SEND, children in care, or all the children and young carers, all the children that we work with through the groups. Anyway, I'll go back to my non-working mic.
I think you'll find you're logged in on your seat now. Thank you. Councillor Reid?
Well, I think Councillor Bennett's hit it on the head as far as I'm concerned as well. I thank you very much for thinking about that. It is something that we have been considering, particularly in the light of that experience when they did come in and we went to the nth degree to put them at their ease. But we want to be, as we've discussed, in their environment where they're most comfortable.
I'm really glad to hear that, because I couldn't really find that in the report, so that's why I asked that question. So having that response, that's the sort of, I agree with that completely, and but thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
I'll give Peter the last word.
But it's really, I mean, what everybody said, but following on from the voice of the child, the voice of the child in the family, it's really, Sarah Jane, do you think that with the new designs, with the pods and everything, that you'll be able to have everybody, I suppose, in the room or in contact? We know that there are all sorts of other factors affecting a child, mental health issues from parents and so on, whether they've been in trouble with the police and so on. Will all those agencies' information be featured in the child's case record? I know it's difficult with data protection, but everything that affects that child's mental and physical welfare, which affects their special educational needs, are you happy that now what you're planning will be the most effective way of getting that information in, so that we've got, child X rolls up and we know this is what their problems are, but also that dad might be an addict, mum might have other problems, or sorry, parents, I shouldn't use mum and dad, but there are issues within that family, the extended family, which directly affect that child's ability to cope with day-to-day life in school. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm always very aware, unless we're working with children where there is a real child protection, safeguarding need, and even in most of those cases, we always work with families. So there's always consent for them to agree what information is shared about their child. What I can say, and we'll always make sure that we get that consent, the way that we're working means that we listen differently to class teachers. Always strike me as being the people who, apart from parents at home or family at home, who really know a child better than anybody else. But the class teacher, in my experience, as a social worker, it was rare to see the class teacher, because you'd see the designated safeguarding lead, or you'd see somebody, and there's a whole reason to do that in schools, because schools are busy places. But actually, who knows that child best? And then how do we make sure that we bring those people together to really help families? So when we talk to families, and Sue will have a view about this, but families say, well, I've now spoken to 8 different people, and actually it would be really helpful if you all knew each other and you could all say, well, don't worry, because such and such, we can speak to them if you're happy for us to do that. And there was some connectivity between the professionals. So the way that we are going to be working is very much at place to make sure that the people at that place are very connected together, whether that's the family workers, the early help hub, the family hub, the social workers, the youth justice workers, the schools, the SEND workers. Everybody works together so that as long as families consent to who is important in their family and what information needs to be shared, it should be a much smoother place. Absolutely. It can only be a good thing to build professional relationships.
Thank you. I think this probably starts to draw to a close now. We've got no more hands up, apart from Councillor Reid. I was going to say, I draw it to close, and I was going to ask any closing comments from the Cabinet member. Thanks.
But I mean, thank you, and thank you for bringing me back in. I'm very grateful on behalf of the partnership represented here to have the chance to talk with you and try and answer your questions, and I hope that we have done so, and there are one or two things that are takeaways for us to come back to you on. And I hope that we have given that sense of partnership. And I'm look at Lisa and Catherine and Sue, along with the rest of the team here, to say that given what Sarah Jane has just said about at place, we are at place in partnership, and that is the way in which we are going to work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may say, what I found pleasing about today is the enthusiasm from the officers and councillors and committee for this subject. It's quite encouraging. So we will now move into any possible recommendations. Now, I've got 2 here. I mean, obviously this subject has got to come back again for reassessment at a later date, see what further progress has been made. So we should put it on the forward work programme. The other one is if the committee is happy, and I agree with you about fair funding, that we write a letter as a committee to the appropriate minister. May not do a lot of good, but that puts a little bit of pressure on, with the permission of the committee. And I would also ask for any further suggestions. Joanna was first.
May I just say that would be great. And would it be possible that we work in tandem on this?
Of course.
Because we can show you what we have already said to the Secretary of State and asked for. We're still awaiting a response to 2 letters that have been written. Nothing has come back from that. And when we make suggestions to government, we want to be able to do that in as comprehensive way as possible on behalf of the local authority and the partnership. And so we will share that with you. We'll share what we have said to the Labour group and our MPs, all of whom have been contacted about this, and we would seek their support across the board. And I think that what you might have to say, they should know about as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, we've got to keep knocking on the door until somebody answers it. So, Joanna, your suggestion?
Chairman, just a quick one. Over the last 18 months, we've had a SEND report, both performance data and an update from the local area partnership in our information bulletin. Can you confirm, please, that will continue? We may only have one more. Sorry, everybody. I don't know what brought that on. That will continue, will it?
Pardon?
That will continue to be reported.
That will continue.
Thank you.
We'll continue to ask for that.
I mean, we may only have one more meeting.
I know we have one more meeting, but we've got a plan as if we haven't got more. We've got to lay the groundwork for possibly the next committee to give them something to chew on. Who knows what's going to happen? Okay, Sarah Jane?
Thank you, Chair. And what we will make sure is that there's always a Chair's report from the Improvement Board, and we're working currently on a SEND data dashboard. I'm sure it's not going to have that title, which will be a dashboard which is publicly available to everybody, and we'll make sure that's available to this committee as well, so that you've got that information, which I don't know how frequently it will be updated. I'm not going to put Harriet on the spot, but it's going to be a live document, which will be helpful as well. Thank you.
Ash?
Possibly part of the recommendation, possibly part of the report, those reporting. Would it be possible to have sight of the slip when it arrives? Is that acceptable? You know, because obviously I know that's in process now, isn't it? So hence the reason that we've been asking many questions on it, because we're kind of midway through it, but something to kind of bundle into a report possibly.
Sarah Jane.
Sorry, Councillor, I'm thinking out loud as to, so you're referring to the word that the work that Bedford Borough are doing with us. Okay, so that will come out through the report that the Chair provides, because that work will be reported into the Improvement Board, so you'll get sight of that from there.
That was my, yeah, there we go, you've answered my question. Just around other recommendations, something we haven't really spoken about today as such, but I know we, well, Sarah Jane's obviously mentioned it about saying that obviously SEND and, you know, is everyone's business, it's all part of the whole thing. I mean, is there any, I know there's obviously loads of things about training for practitioners and for senior leaders and for schools and everything. Is there any opportunity, is there any, like, could it be something that maybe as us as members, as council members, have some sort of training as well, like we do with kind of corporate parenting, etc.? Is that something that could be worked?
Chair, we're absolutely in agreement for that, so we can work out the best way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. James, you have a recommendation?
Well, I hope people can help with the recommendation, but what we heard at the end there, and Sue was mentioning what her role was before, and I think, Sarah Jane, I heard that it's recognised that there's a need for that service, which is no longer there, if I've understood correctly. And you've said you're looking at it. Can a recommendation be that it's looked at to see what was there previously that worked and that is no longer here? How you put that into a recommendation, I have no clue, but I'm sure Helen will work something.
I think we'll work on that one, yeah. Anybody else?
I was just, there was a report done on the NTDI, are they people that do reports? Yeah, there was a report on the Independent Support Service and the success of it, because there was a hope that it would continue, because it is in the Code of Practice, but as I say, the government withdrew the funding for that in 2017, I believe, so 3 years into the SEND reforms. But Sendias provided the service as well as Scope, so there were two organisations in Suffolk that were providing that service, so I'm sure there would be data somewhere on the effectiveness of it and how appreciated it was.
Yeah, because is Sendias really replacing, or is that the same service?
No. In a nutshell, Sendias were there before. The Independent Support Service was specifically to be there from when, to support the families from the start of the SEND process to the end of it.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have an answer, but I think it's absolutely the right challenge, and definitely, Sue, from the survey that was undertaken from PCF, this was overwhelmingly parental mental health is something that as a partnership we need to really make sure we're leaning into support. So I think it's a helpful recommendation to the local area partnership to consider what's gone before, and then to consider how we can, I don't know what the services would look like, because it might be that it's something that we do from what we already have, but we just behave in a different way. But it needs to be considered, and I think it would be helpful if we're in agreement to bring back to here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just wonder if we can monitor and review the number of children who are in mainstream, but where the local authority acknowledges that's not an appropriate setting. It could be an information bulletin item. Big fan of information bulletins, or it may be for a future discussion.
We will take, you can still put in requests for recommendations. We will sort them out and refine them as normal and ask for your okay. I would like to thank everybody to come for quite an enthusiastic session today. I think in the main it's got a positive slant on it. Everybody's trying their best. Everybody's doing the best with what they've got. And I think the enthusiasm there is to achieve something. So thank you very much for coming. As for the committee, I presume you would rather get finished than have a break. That's the way I feel. Okay. We'll just give them a minute to clear. Okay, we'll carry on. Please note the information bulletin on pages 61 to 64 as set out in the agenda. The information bulletin allows the committee to request information without the need for a full scrutiny report on our agenda, which helps to keep meetings manageable and focused on our chosen scrutiny subjects. Any questions on the content of the information bulletin should be raised with the officer in the context set out at the end of each item. If members have concerns arising from the information which they feel the committee should look into further, please raise these under agenda item 7 forward work programme. Any comments on that? Okay. We will.
Can I speak? Yeah. What I wanted to say is elected members, councillors, now receive a link to the corporate performance report as soon as it's published, and we did this week. Would it be possible to set up a system so the independent members of this committee get that as well? I think it's a question to Helen, really.
Yes, certainly.
It's online.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's on the website.
Yeah. It's published every quarter.
I mean, it's public information, there's no reason why, but it'd just be a case of whoever has the right contact details of saying, here's the link. So
It's public information. I'm just thinking it would be helpful to our independent members if Helen could kindly wing the link to them when it comes out, so they don't have to wait till March to have the easy link. Because believe you me, finding it on the public website is not the easiest thing in the world. But it's very good now.
Thank you. Okay, well, we go on to the forward work programme. The committee is asked to put forward suggestions for its forward work programme set out on agenda page 65-67 as set out on the agenda again. The next meeting for this committee will be 5th of March 2026, when the committee will be considering a review of the leaving care offer in Suffolk. Subsequent meeting dates are listed on the forward work programme for the committee's information. Are there any topics members wish to propose for the forward work programme or requests for information bulletins? Please.
So on that next item, leaving care, and based on some of the comments and feedback I've had from both people who've come to support us and committees and from yourselves, I wondered whether it might be a good thing to arrange a session with care leavers outside of a public meeting for allow members to have a real sort of a free-flowing dialogue.
I think that would be an excellent idea because we can't talk about too much in public.
No, we can't. And some of them,
I do like the committee to go to the coalface and see what is actually happening.
no, and some of our young people who work with us are incredibly generous with what they share, so we can understand it. But it wouldn't be fair to share that in a public meeting.
Yeah. We say we can't discuss young people in public. So, but we need to know. Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. That's brilliant because I think their lived experience. Have we got it right, basically? But certainly not bring them into the Star Chamber and grilling them. But I would certainly welcome meeting some of them. Thank you.
Joanna, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a very sensible and helpful suggestion, but it does also make us ponder whether this is a subject that we can add value by scrutinising it in the public forum like this. Now, fellow members think we can, but given the sensitivities that there will be and will have picked up, you think
It's
you're
difficult.
confident.
Sorry, Bobby.
May I just, what I would say to that is that what you will hear from the young people is their experience, and that will help you understand the context of the strategic issues that Ofsted picked up. The reason we're very keen for Scrutiny to look at this is because there were a number of things picked up in ILACs. We're expecting a focus visit coming forward, and some of those strategic things that are looking at housing, how we're supporting them with education and training, are they aware of our local offer? All that, and is our local offer right? All of those things, I think, would be very good to have public challenge on.
Okay. The next meeting, I think, Helen, you had some suggestions.
Yeah, we can talk about that next time.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next time. So, because of the difficulties, we don't know what's happening in the future. We don't know whether this committee will still exist after May in its present form. It's very difficult to enforce things onto possibly a new committee. So what we'll do, we'll know more at the March meeting. We will make some decisions then. I think today's topic has got to come back towards the end of next year. I've got no doubt about that. But the way we fill in, so much depends on the events in the next few months. And hopefully in March we should know where we stand. If everybody's happy with that, or any other suggestions? It's all very quiet, so I take it that's okay. So I think I'll close the meeting.